This has been a wild journey here on the Cyber Mettle Podcast. Guests galore. Very, an embarrassment of riches. Very privileged to have Ofir Stein on here. We'll get to the intro in a second. As always, Omar Sangurima, and I'm joined by wonderful co-host Alyson Laderman.
Oh, all right. Yeah, no, I'm glad to be back after a couple weeks off for some medical issues. So we're glad to be back, have the band back together and picking up where we left off. So as usual, we'll give our normal disclaimer, though I'm a lawyer and these two gentlemen are cybersecurity professionals. We are not your lawyer or cybersecurity professionals. So we are here to give wisdom and advice and our experiences and share that with you so that you as an audience can take that information and start questioning things and approaching your resilience personally and professionally from different lenses so that you can become a better state than where you were previously. With that said, we would love to have an intro. See, this is very human. An intro.
Yeah.
Sorry, Ofir. Please let me, introduce yourself to the audience. Let them know who you are, where you're from, and why you're here today.
Great. So thank you, Alyson and Omar, to having me here. So everyone, my name is Ofir. I'm the CTO and co-founder of Apono today, and all of my background, more than 20-something years on the tech space. Been in the Israeli Air Force for working on infrastructure and different infrastructure in different directions. And I think what's very interesting about that many years over there about that movement from infrastructure that moved in on-prem environment to the cloud environment, right? It was the time that DevOps wasn't a thing. No one knew what is DevOps. We have different IT departments and we moved into cloud space. And it's really fascinating from my space, working on infrastructure and infrastructure security in the end of how this infrastructure are actually moving to the cloud. So it was a very interesting journey, working different companies on building very cool products and building and solving a lot of tech problems that part of them in the security space or kind of like in the scale space. And in the last more than 5 years with Apono, we are kind of like exploring the IAM space and how to kind of modernize the way that we protect our different aspects in our environment from an access perspective. We are a modern access security platform focusing on risk and privilege access in that regard.
I love that you said, right, like living through the 20 years of, the history there when DevOps wasn't a thing and then now it is. And the migration there, it begs the question, a big shakeup occurring now with AI. It's all very kind of similar. It has similar vibes where, and I always wondered, like, what it would have been like if I had been around, during the move to cloud, when cloud was a thing. Was it like this? Was it nuts? Was it slower? Was it faster? But you touched on, modernizing identity access management. In the age of AI, what exactly, like, what does that mean? How are you approaching it? What do you see as issues there? Like for the common listener, what does that mean to them?
Yeah, so it's a great questions. And I think if we start, it's a very different change today than what we saw before on the cloud change. And the reason is to think about who is impacted from that directly. So when we moved from infrastructure on-prem to the cloud, of course, myself and other tech guys, our life changed from 180. My family that are not come from the tech space, they didn't care, right? Like I just moved, like we moved everything to the cloud. And my father like, where? Right? Like he's look up. Well, you move the infrastructure. Well, we have kind of like a plain interesting right? This was the proof over there. But we moved to the cloud. It was a huge different shift. But now with AI, I don't hear when I say in my family, we help to protect agent and AI, right? Like they didn't say like, what is it agents or what they do or what is AI? It's like, oh, this is the kind of like this ChatGPT or a Gemini or that kind of a tool that we already use on the day-to-day basis. Everyone understands like, it's crazy. He wrote song to me in my house, right? Like they know what I'm talking about. And I think this is what is like the difference between then to now. It's that it's affect everyone. AI impact is affecting all of us. Every one of us, it doesn't matter what we do. We don't need it to be in the tech space or the security space. We already know the impact of AI, or we imagine what the impact of AI can be. It can be very scary. And we hear that a lot on the industry as well. It's like a scary thing. Wow, it can write songs. So what's going to happen to me? And we hear that from that perspective. When I talk about identity, and maybe we will touch that, and access management, that there are different things, right? I talk about the ability for us to walk inside this digital world in a way that's going to allow us to create guardrails and controls and share the information and the action that we want to do in the digital world in a safe way. Right? We all live in this world today. Identity and access management is part of our day-to-day. Today, I just logged into the system that we recording right now, the podcast, and I'm logging to my computer. I log into my bank account, and I have this kind of logins of where the identity it's myself, right? Like it's Ofir. I'm a real human being going interact inside the digital world, and I want to make sure that the digital world know that I am Ofir, and the proper permission and access is actually given for me. And it's great. We have that kind of identity, and we have the workload identity. The workload identity is the different application that run in the environment. We don't think about them as normal people, but they are over there all the time doing things that we want, and they have their own identity because they are not coupled to a human action or to a human interaction. They can do things on a scheduled basis or maybe work inside the environment. So we had that kind of two identities that we work with, human and non-human identities. It was very easy to differentiate between them, right? Like the human he live in the real world, he talk with us, he have a natural language ability, decision ability, and the application is more like a logic, a code lines that doing something in the environment. And we always have that kind of like a game of guessing if it's a machine or a human, right? And I think AI and agent specifically, because agent is kind of like an illusion of using AI in a way that provide us the same human approach on how we act, right? Like we try kind of like take AI and say, let's make it like a human. It's an agent, right? He has a goal. He is thinking because it's an endless loop of AI. And I think what we see with AI, it's actually a very interesting situation when we see a machine that can get kind of like a non-deterministic decisions. They can decide, they can adapt based on the input in a real time, and they do it very fast. So they are adaptable and non-deterministic like human, when like you and I, when we are deciding what to say while we're speaking, right? And I can change my narrative, I can change my goal all the time, right? But they are moving in a very fast machine speed. While I am speaking with you all, we have kind of like a few minutes, we all listening or interacting with each other. The machine can do in the same time hundreds of thousands of different decisions and actions while we're speaking. They doing that in a machine speed. And we know that we were really slow to machine speed, try to compete with computer on calculation or something like that. You will see that we don't have a chance, right? So now the machine is doing decision in the speed of machine, and it's new for us. And I think this is what we see from complexity. This is the complex problem of how you protect that, how you manage the right access to this kind of new identity that live in the environment. And this is where we come into place with companies. So Apono is help companies on the problem of, we talk about privilege access, is how you manage access to the sensitive areas that sometimes you need access to them, but you do it in a safe way with the right guardrails, with the right validations, taking the identity, understand this is the real identity, and also connect this in the right time. We do it for the cloud shift. So our approach is doing that dynamically. You can think about it as you have different doors in your area, and you need to open and close those doors based on what makes sense. You don't want to keep all the doors open because it's actually provide an attacker in this situation. It's provide an attacker an ability to exploit that. So we open and close the doors dynamically. This is taking organization to a place when they think about their access as a zero standing privilege philosophy, when no one have privileges to anything, and it's open based on their needs to the right time and to in the right scope, right? Just to what they need to do. So this is what we do today with companies for human and machines. And now we're getting into agents and AI and thinking about, let's do the same. Let's think in the machine speed when we need to protect it. And we will decide to open and close the agent's doors based on what they need to do in the environment. This is where we come from for helping that challenge in modern organizations. So this is what I meant by modern access management, is this approach. And we try to do that today with our customers and companies that we work with, to all of those types of identity, if we want to say.
What was the first use case, or what was the inspiration here?
Mm-hmm.
Because, like, especially coming from your background, again, it's out of the bag. I think the use case is phenomenal, right? I think it's very much needed. Even non-agentic PAM, right? Privileged access management, can be problematic, especially in a varied legacy environment, right? Trying to figure out how to give folks step up privileges, how to do it in a smooth way. And we're not even talking about AI, just doing it with, rinky dinky endpoints, making sure, does everyone need local admin? And people get into knife fights in enterprise situations there, right? Like, no, I need my admin privileges. No, you don't. That's nuts. So, but I'm interested to see, like, what was the inspiration to go, listen, that's needed? Was it something you faced? Was it something you're trying to crack? Like, tell us a little bit more there.
Yeah, definitely. And the inspiration is, as actually we are two co-founders in our company. Myself, as introduced, and the other co-founder is Ron Carmel. He's coming more of a background of cybersecurity, more on the research and offensive side of things. And we founded this company together, and like entrepreneurs that start to build their companies, we went to the market and we start figure out what their problem. And we found the tension between us and the people we talk with us is actually very interesting. When I come from the building side of things, so I know our access management can actually harm your productivity, right? It can harm you for doing what you try to do and create kind of like friction, a lot of friction, so much friction. And this is exactly what you said, Omar. Do you need this admin? You don't need this admin. And like after 5 days, you kind of like, okay, so let's decide something, right? But this time is actually harm the businesses, the ability of businesses create value to their customer. It's harm the ability of businesses or even to our kind of a progress of creating new things. It's a friction, is a slowness. It's a slow time to value in the end of the days. So I told Ron, my co-founder, I said, let's create a product that's going to provide access to everyone. Like everyone have admin. Right? If everyone have admin, no one going to cry, I don't have admin. And he looked at me like in his eyes as someone that
the cyber person probably was like, "Are you mad? No way."
We in a security podcast, so sorry all the listeners that hear that and say, "Oh my God!" And so don't stop to listen. I promise you, there is a point here. So he's looking at me exactly like you all looked at me right now and said, no, you missed the point. No one have access to anything, because then as an attacker, I cannot exploit anything, because most of the attacks that we know today are actually exploiting identity in some way. It's not all 0 days. It's the most sexy attacks, right? Like it's like we have a 0 day. It's a new thing, but most of the attacks are just exploiting things that we already have and use the identity as one of their paths inside the organization. So it's not something you can do. And this friction between us is actually something we saw in organization is a huge problem, right? This friction between productivity and security on access management, it's something we saw as a huge problem. And we went to that and we say, okay, we're going to solve this problem. And this is what we do in the last 5 years. This is what we invest our time in. How can we help organizations to align security and productivity together? Because in the end, you want to be able to have everyone the access that they need, but you want to be able to stay safe over time with that kind of overprivilege and that risk that grow with the access needs in the environment. So this is why we founded Apono. This is what we do today. And this is why I'm so excited about the future of Apono as well and what we're going to do.
So how do you expand that into AI agents, right? So obviously getting people to care, one, about their own identity and where they're spreading that seed all around and why they should be mindful of that is obviously its own challenge. But when you have machines that are designed to just go through the doors and answer the questions without really that consideration of, do we unlock this or do we not? How does your company address that particular issue?
Yeah. So we look at this issue, and we have the kind of like the approach side of Apono that's really fit to that, because when you think about how we saw this problem of friction between productivity and security start from the beginning, we saw this problem grow with the cloud adoption, right? Because cloud took something that was very slow and very static, like infrastructure in the on-prem space, and he moved it to a dynamic environment where infrastructure is changed from code. So infrastructure is actually a code, and code is changing very fast. So we found ourselves into an environment that is really, really dynamic, right? Like, and you can think about when I ask customer, like, how many servers do you have? I mean, it depends when I ask, right? Like now we have 5. After a few minutes, we have 1,000. It's go up and down and change. The environment is a really dynamic environment. And the environment is what you manage access to, right? It's the resource that it's the target. So we find ourselves into a situation. We say, how you manage a very dynamic and environment that change all the time. This is where the kind of like how you do zero standing privilege is with kind of streamline the security and the access into different self-service, just-in-time workflows, and the ability to discover and react to the environment in a real time, right? It's like discover the environment, understand what is needed, and create dynamic policies that based on the context that exists in the environment, they change that access that needed to be. So what I mean by that is you can think about situation when the environment change, with the environment, also the context on the identity change, right? Like there is new employee, people move between jobs, people leave the company, and we have different systems that have different contexts. I am on call right now. I need to support production. Tomorrow, someone else is supporting production. All of this data is fed into Apono and create a context-based decision for the access itself. So we take the environment change, the context from the environment, the context from the identity, and create a dynamic policy that you don't need to chase and change all the time, right? Because this dynamic policy is just changing the access grants based on the environment itself. This is what we do for humans, right? Like already as that. When we move to agentic, we actually move few steps up on the dynamic and the scalability and the speed that we see on the environment. So now we don't have only the environment changing in a crazy way, also the identity itself. Agents are going up and down, changing their goals, doing tasks in a machine speed. All of that complexity getting into the same space that everything is very, very dynamic. So the first thing that we saw is we need to move our control from a static control when we define a static policies to control everything to dynamic control. And this is where the dynamic policies of Apono is really fit to that. So I think this is the first thing that we see on AI agent. The second thing is the situation we need to move from a kind of like preparing thing beforehand to a real time and real time decision on the environment. A lot of our controls in those spaces is taking human into kind of like a cadence control, access reviews. I will review once in a few months, right? Or workflows that provide approval in the way, very slow processes that are not met the kind of like the dynamic and the fast phase environment changes. So we move our controls, the enforcement of this dynamic environment to be in real time, to be able to control the agent in real time while they decide their decision. And this is another key here from our solution and approach is moving from only identity is great, to intent. We want to be able to understand the intent of the agent in real time and be able to get the decision based on that. So you can think about it. It's actually make a lot of sense. When you think about it, you have an agent and the agent doing things in the environment. They are non-deterministic. So we cannot predict what they're going to do. They're going to change their goals, change their action, right? So we're going to keep track with them, understanding their intent over time, be able to enforce them using dynamic policies that change in the same speed like the agents, right? And this is our approach when we go to agents. It's built on top of the approach that we saw that worked for human perspective. And I think this is why it worked for humans. Humans are dynamic. Humans are adaptable. So it's just like, let's enforce that in a larger scale and speed. In that regard, put the intent on top of that. And this is where we are going from our solution to agents. Or this is how we believe that we can leverage agent in the end. I believe that most of the listeners already have some experience with agents in some way, right? They play with that AI agent, something you deal with the co-pilot agent. This is most what people know today. So when you talk with something that do many things, right? And I think we also going into a space of autonomous agents. So the agent that we like the application today, we don't need them because they can do things by themselves. They can interact with each other. They can execute things in the environment and get some progress even when we sleep, right? It's kind of like a super powerful organization, and it's super powerful for us, right? Like, I want my own agents to help me in my life, right? I don't need to tell me to my business. The problem is it's very hard to provide them access to things and trust them in some way. So it's also a new thing. We need to trust our computers, and it's like funny thing to say because it's my computer. I trust him, right? It's just a program, and I don't know if I trust any other people. We have different ways, and you are in the legal space, so all of that it's like creating trust between people. It's exactly that, right? Now we need to understand how to create trust with agents and computers in the end, right? And it's really interesting for me how to allow that to unleash the ability to get more productive and create a lot of value to organizations, but also to myself. I want to use this value in my day to day. And I'm really scared to do that today because of the problems of giving and trusting this being or this tool that we use. So this is a little bit from my.
Well, so for a company that is looking to trust an AI agent, AI agents are created by so many third-party vendors. It's not always, like you said, like Microsoft Copilot, but then there's others that are built on top of something else that somebody else built using AI coding and all that type of stuff. For a business to decide and evaluate which of the agents they should be trusting and at what level of trust, what advice would you give them and things that they should consider at any level, whether they're very familiar with technology or just starting out going, hey, I was told it would do this job and make my job easier. Do I trust this thing? Like I don't want to say, Zapier is the API connector, but you know what I mean? Like something that is a third party product that's supposed to come in and do the thing and search your files and whatever. What advice would you give to a business as to how do you determine which ones of these you trust and things that they should consider when making that determination?
Yeah, definitely. And I think from that perspective, I will add a small thing just for the conversation for us to understand. Yeah. So agents, in the end, they are just code, right? They are run and use LLM, large language model that is not deterministic, right? And it can be change their behaviors because of that. But in the end, it's endless loop that run with the LLM. When agent is doing something, the agent is not doing anything. So the LLM is just saying for the application, I think we need to do that. I want to do that, right? Let's do that. Because the application told the agent, you can do that, right? So this endless loop between the application, I will call that like the framework that enable us to use the agent. And this is where you see all these agents in so many applications. It's like the different frameworks that provide us or enable us to run the agent, kind of like architecture, or using the LLM in an endless loop, and it's create this kind of like an agent illusion in some way. So we have different frameworks that enable us to use agents. The agents themselves are tools that use from LLM. So where the risk come from is that the LLM itself, the non-deterministic LLM, can be manipulated by input. So it's called prompt injection, and there is a lot of different attack vectors that we know that actually based on that. And we also know this space from a human perspective, right? From a human perspective, this risk of social engineering, right? We know that. Right. We understand that. We live with that. We we don't have any protection, like 100% protection for social engineering. And we probably don't going to have any 100% protection from prompt injection. It's exactly the same. People can be manipulated. If you're going to fake this call, I'm probably going to think I am in a real podcast right now. And and I can share thing maybe, I don't know. But an agent is exactly the same. The LLM of the agent can be manipulated from context. The context can come from the LLM from different places. It can come from the user. So I can tell the LLM something, and then it's do that. It can come from the framework. The framework add more context or more prompts, right? Like to the agent, to the LLM itself to make it an agent, right? So it can come from the framework, and it can come from third-party tool that I'm connecting. Third-party tools that are connecting are the way of the agent to go to the out world through the framework. So let's say a simple example, I have a research agent. I told him you can research in the internet, right? What the framework is doing is taking the internet search and combine it with the agent and tell the agent, you can tell me to do searches and I will return this response to you. The response, it's a new prompt that comes into the LLM that can be manipulating, right? So when we talk about trust from agents, we actually talk about our ability to create that risk assessment on the agent, understand what is the risk we get from the agent, and control what the agent is actually doing, what we allow him to do and what not. So the first thing for everyone that want to be able to trust their agent, I think the first thing is to understand what frameworks you trust, because the framework is actually, it's everything, right? They're going to control the traffic between everything you're going to connect to the LLM and both directions. So choose framework that you trust, and there is a lot of frameworks that you can trust today. It's really depends. It's like trusting your bank account or trusting like a vendor that a third-party vendor. I don't think it's a new thing, but just understand that when you use framework that use agent, you trust the framework first. Before you trust the agent, you need to trust the framework, because the framework is going to be the one that's going to enable the agent in the end and do all this kind of like prompt connection. The second thing in my eyes that you need to do for trusting an agent is kind of like framing what the blast radius of the agent, what the agent can do. If we have an agent that can search the web and do some web research, what's the risk, right? So we know that the framework is going to interact with the agent and it's going to open only the web browser. We believe in that. We think it's safe. The context that come outside of the internet can influence the agent, but the blast radius is still just from our perspective, the data that the agent have, right? So we don't have anything else that can happen with that. So we have that kind of trust. We can trust research agent because they cannot do something harmful for us. The problem starts when you start providing more and more complicated tools, right? Like the agent ability is called tools. You provide the agent more and more capabilities. And I think the paradox that we are live today is that if you provide a lot of tools, a lot of capabilities to the agent, you will get a lot of value, but your trust level is going down, right? So it's kind of like framing that together. So maybe for everyone that's trying to create a trust for the agent, it start with using a trust framework and then create kind of like a risk assessment based on the capabilities you provide the agent. And with that, frame this different kind of like agent for different use cases or different users that can use them in such way, segregate them in such way that's going to provide you that trust. And like social engineering, in the end, I think we don't going to get 100% trust for those. I don't know if everyone love to hear that or not, but in my eyes, we don't going to get 100%. Like we don't have 100% on social engineering in so many other spaces, right? Like so it's more about the risk assessment, and then you live inside this kind of like a risk tier that you feel comfortable with.
That is such a refreshing take, Ofir, because other folks in your position would maybe be incentivized to say, nah, we figured it out. I got you. It's the 100%. and just straight up saying, it's not there. You have to basically tend your garden and be, eyes open in what you're allowing to interact with what. Blast radius was a great point, and bringing it back to social engineering. It's the bane of every cybersecurity practitioner's existence, right? You can have all sorts of defense in depth. You can have, but then somebody calls somebody calls the right person and convinces something to happen, and suddenly you have the MGM attack, right? Or you have the, to pick on them. But like, what, from your perspective, and again, like that, I'm going to just, I'm going to cut, that's going to be a clip. I loved how you handle that. Because again, on your side of things, that enables trust, I think, in terms of you're saying, hey, listen, you have to, I'm not going to sell you wolf tickets. You got to look at the risk, and you got to be conscious of it. What's the biggest, we talked about friction from the technical perspective, but when you're talking to prospective folks, prospective partners that are, hey, listen, this is something that could help you, where do you see the friction coming back? Like, what's the hurdles that you need to get through usually when you're talking to either the infrastructure side or the security side of a potential client? Where do they come back and say, wait a second, I don't know? Like, is there, because you sold me, man. Like this just sounds, of course this makes sense. And you're speaking not in, mythological levels of security. You're saying, listen, we got to do the hard work. Where do you see the pushback on prospective meetings?
Yeah. So it's a good question. I think the most kind of like pushback and friction on that is kind of like security teams are overloaded. They have so many different initiatives that they need to fix. And most of the time is like, it's kind of like I don't want to hear about a new attack vector or a new risk, right?
Yeah.
Like I don't worry. We don't use autonomous agent. We don't have agent in our organization, or we have, but they okay. The agent, okay. I trust them. I don't want to think about that because I'm overloaded with all of these kind of like different risk areas that I have in the organization. To say the truth, this is the pushback I hear from that direction. It's more about, I have so many risks that I have in my organization. How can I prioritize them in a way, and where I need to put this kind of like a agentic risk or access risk inside of that? And I understand that because it's also like, let's be honest, it's the cybersecurity space have a lot of noise that try to scare us, right? Like it's so scary, you can't sleep at night. You must buy my product, like or something like that. So many vendors are pushing into a kind of a fear strategy because it's woke, right? Like
fear sells.
Yeah, it sells. Like fear sells. I have nothing to say about it. I come from the technology side. I believe that if you talk with the more of the go-to-market and business sides, we're going to talk different. But I understand that. And I think this is where is the most of the pushback come from. We need to think, when we think about solutions, put the kind of like the marketing or field aside, we need to think how to make the life of security teams easier, because they need to have the easier life, because they need to be able to protect us from so many different risks in the end. And a lot of that is about the overload of how to simplify and kind of like prioritize the different risks you have in the organization. And I think all of us live in a situation that technology and this kind of like AI and agentic, it's moved very fast, right? Like we all feel that, like every week there is a new thing, like a new trend, right? Now agents have a social media that they talk with each other, and
oh man,
like a Facebook for agents, right? Like, yeah, all of us, like it's 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, like everything is moving so fast, and we see that, and we all into this situation. It's like, it's too much. We need to understand how we put it aside. And what I think is very refreshing about this new technology from that space is that it's not just a problem, it's also the solution. AI and agents can help us with the overload, because everything is moving so fast, but computer move fast as well. So we can use that. It's tools. We don't need to scare from that. We need to understand that when we embrace this technology in a safe way, or we try to embrace this technology because everything is changing so fast, we can actually get the value from that to help us. So a lot of the time for security team is like how you use AI to help your overwhelming, to understand how to prioritize and get all of that. And I think there is a lot of potential in that space as well. In our product, we have a lot of AI and agents that help our customers to work with our product, not just about protecting AI and agents. You can use Apono with AI and agents that we wrote into our platform just to make the life of the user, the security that work with our platform, to make their life easier. So I think this is probably the thing that we hear from a blocker perspective, and I hope that we will hear more and more useful things that are going to help security guys to protect us. There is also the friction between security and their teams, right? Their engineering, their platform teams, because the business is moving forward. Definitely in today, kind of like a formal situation when everyone is kind of like see the future and say, we need to go first. So organization get from the executives, you need to go fast, right? It's make the security life even harder because they cannot say we block it. I didn't hear one customer that's saying, I'm going to block it. It's like always, I need to enable it. I don't know how. They already using it.
Yeah.
I think it's okay.
It's already happening there, and saying we're going to block it is, I got to refresh my resume of here, right? Like if I'm the person, I can't be the blocker. You're absolutely correct in terms of, it's, and the already happening piece is huge, right? Because it's like, if it's not already happening, it's already happening. We maybe just don't know that it is from the security side, where it's like, listen, that's just shadow IT, folks, because we're all getting the same news, right? Oh, look what this can do. Look what agents can get done for you. And what do the executive leadership has boards to report to. What are you doing in this space? How is it increasing efficiencies? Well, nobody wants to be the department that said, hey, we got to stop. We got to pump the brakes, man. And also, what resonated with me was the piece at the beginning. I've been in those meetings where the security folks are like, I don't want to hear this, because if I hear it, I know it's happening. I got to do something about it. Oh my God.
It's like a lawyer. Don't tell me you did it, because I can't work around that.
Right. Exactly. Like there's no retainer. Like there's nothing in place. What are we doing? I didn't hear this.
I mean, this was fantastic. If there's any advice that you think that you want to give to a small business that is faced with, we've got to use all these agents, and they are trying to figure out which are noise and which are most beneficial that they can provide their trust in, what kind of advice would you give those businesses?
Yeah. So I think in the end is you cannot stop that, right? So you need to embrace that. Use this to your superpower. If you have overload from agents, or you don't know the answer about how to protect agents, use agents to do that, right? Use the technology, use the AI, balance kind of like balance the two sides of solving the problem and being the problem with the same things. And everything is moving very, very fast. But in the end, it's the same principles we all know from security perspective and from technology perspective. And I think this is also something we need to remember. It's another tool. It's a very cool tool. It's a very new tool. There is new protocols and standards that are created right now. We can see them. We can talk about them. If it's off to OBO and others, and we see that kind of like collided of standards also from an agent perspective. It's an MCP, agent to agent, and everyone is on top of that. So we're definitely going to see the light in the other side. But we need to understand how to change, how to harness this technology and embrace that to our teams. And I think from there, I'm very optimistic about the future.
Awesome. Wonderful. I mean, this is one of those conversations where, as you're talking, Ofir, I have, 6, 7 other questions that are coming by, because, there's a lot of snake oil in this space. There's a lot of folks that, have been AI experts for 35 years. All of a sudden, right? Wait a second. I thought you were selling books yesterday. Now you're AI expert. I've been on this AI. No, you haven't. but it's refreshing to hear the honesty, the measured take, and having advice at different levels, right? You spoke at the enterprise level, you spoke at for the team to team level, and then also for the small business angle of it. Ofir, we'd love to have you back, but we want to be respectful of your time. So thank you so much for hopping on. In the show notes, of course, we'll include links to Apono and anything you want to put in there. And for our listeners, we try our best to get cutting edge folks on calls in order to talk about things that I'm positive are running through on everyone's mind in terms of how to get our arms around technology that seems to be accelerating, not slowing down at all. So with that, bid you guys farewell, and as always, keep it cyber metal. Take care.
Thank you.